This is Michael Popok. It must be time for Legal AF After Dark. Special Counsel Robert Hur. Special Counsel Robert Hur. What have you done by putting inappropriate commentary and marginalia, as we like to say, in your report against Joe Biden's handling of classified documents, instead of just saying there was no crime committed and therefore I'm not prosecuting it, you had to write things about his memory at a time when maybe his memory was properly challenged, like with death of a child or during a war when you were he was giving you his interview. But to compare Joe Biden's open and transparent self-reporting of documents that came with him after he left the vice presidency with Donald Trump's acts of criminal deception is a disservice to the office of the special counsel and certainly to President Joe Biden. We break it all down, including Robert Hur's testimony. Is that what it was? In front of Congress, where he became a puppet of MAGA until the Democrats got involved. Only one place, Legal AF. Take a listen. We're going to talk about Robert Hur. I'll frame it. I want to talk about Judge Luttig, who I interviewed recently. He's becoming a semi-regular on Legal AF, which I appreciate and respect greatly because he's from the opposite side of the political spectrum, always has been. But, in the way we do interviews, whether it's your interviews that you've been doing or mine or ones that Ben have been doing, we try to pull from across the political spectrum. We're not gatekeeping. We're not going, oh no, there's no litmus test here. Oh, you're not deep blue. You're not progressive right, left. We're not interested. That's not true. We have to hear from all sides on the issues that sit at the intersection of law, politics, and justice. And I had the pleasure of talking to Judge Luttig about the Robert Hur report just as it had come out. And that's the report for those that are just joining us late. Or didn't follow the story. After a year of investigation, the best Robert Hur could come up with was there was a bunch of boxes in the garage in Delaware. There were a few files in a filing cabinet in Joe Biden's bedroom and a couple of other things that he thinks were mishandled. And in the course of interviewing a willing participant in the interview process, and Joe Biden, the opposite of the deceptive tactics that have been used by the former president, Trump, the deception, the hiding of the documents. We're going to talk about when we get to the Mar-a-Lago clip, the movement of the boxes at direction of Donald Trump, the attempt to hide the security footage, the instruction to lawyers to make top secret classified documents disappear before they were turned over, or instead of turning them over to the National Archive or to the Department of Justice, or turn them over pursuant to grand jury subpoenas or search warrants authorized by magistrate judges. That's different than Joe Biden, in packing up and leaving, kept his diaries of written notes that he took in his conversations with the president at the time, Barack Obama, similar to what Ronald Reagan had done. I think they all had done some version of that, and took some other documents that he thought was important for posterity's purposes. And if he ever got around to writing a book, that's the worst you can say about Joe Biden. Is it proper handling of classified and top secret information? Probably not. Does it rise to the level of criminality with all of the willfulness that is required? No. And I think Robert Hur could have said that in his report without having to go further to say that the president in his interviews came off as having failing memory and on key issues. He didn't say senile, he didn't say dementia, but he came close about his interactions with the president in his voluntary interviews that were given, some of which were given during the start of a war between Hamas and Israel, when the president, I'm sure, was otherwise occupied. And then in very personal discussions about the loss of Joe Biden's son, Beau Biden, who, I guess no parent has a favorite child, but let's be frank, Beau Biden was Joe Biden's favorite child, and he thought that was the one that was going to be the president of the United States. And so that loss was tremendous after a series of loss in the Biden family life. And so that he got a couple of details wrong about that, I just think it was an unfair assessment of Joe Biden's candor and cooperation during that interview. And it came up again during the quote unquote softball cross-examination by MAGA in Congress. Judge Luttig, who I alluded to, had his own comments when he heard about and read about what the special prosecutor had put in the written report, and we're going to play it now just to remind everybody where we were with that.
And again, all I know is from what I watched that 45 minutes, and but I heard the most salient things, and in particular, there's, I guess, considerable discussion in this 315-page report, which, again, in my view, is an abuse of power, pure and simple. And but he goes on at length about the incumbent president's mental capacity in whatever contexts, all toward the end of concluding that Joe Biden should not be prosecuted. That's about as unseemly and an abuse of power as I can imagine. Now, your viewers should also know that I felt exactly the same way about the former FBI director, James Comey, when at the end of his investigation of Secretary Clinton, he did and said what he did.
And then I thought it was very proper and astute political theater. This is going to be political theater. Speaking of New York and New Yorkers, what Representative Jerry Nadler did when he had Hur on there, because Hur's out there, right? He's out there with this position that he didn't have to take, as we just heard from Judge Ludig, gratuitous commentary where he became an amateur psychoanalytic expert about somebody's ability to recall and memory issues, in contrast to what we saw up on the stage during the State of the Union address with a fiery Joe Biden finally getting off the mat and firing back as he needed to. Jerry Nadler ran for Hur while he was sitting there an amazing compilation of the other person that's running for the presidency, who's 78 years old, and his malaprops and inability to recall. Let's play that.
Here, too, the record speaks for itself.
One of the great memories of all time, James Webb. I don't remember the names. Don't remember the name.
Viktor Orban. Did anyone ever hear of him? He's the leader of Turkey.
By the way, they never report the crowd on January 6th. You know, Nikki Haley is in charge of security.
3 years later, how about that?
Did you actually have a one-on-one with Comey then?
Not much, not even that I remember.
I like mosquitoes. We have languages coming into our country. We have nobody that even speaks those languages. They're truly foreign languages. Nobody speaks them. Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat your... Oh.
I have a really good memory.
Your next wife was a woman by the name of Marla Maples.
That's right.
Do you recall what years you were married to Ms. Maples?
It's called like Up Here, and it's called Memory, and it's called other things.
So you don't remember saying you have one of the best memories?
I don't remember that.
And Putin, has so little respect for Obama that he's starting to throw around the nuclear word. You've heard that, nuclear.
We have to win in November, or we're not going to have Pennsylvania. They'll change the name.
I talked to Putin a lot.
Did you ask him that?
I don't remember that. I saw that this morning. I don't remember asking him that question. I have a good memory and all that stuff, like a great memory.
For 20 years, they were fighting ISIS. I defeated ISIS in 4 weeks.
And we did with Obama. We won an election that everyone said couldn't be won.
I'm not cognitively. And you know what? When I am, you're going to know it. You're going to be the first people. I know my people. You'll say, all right, Trump, you did a good job. Get the hell out of here. That's it.
That is a man who is incapable of avoiding criminal liability, a man who is wholly unfit for office, and a man who, at the very least, ought to think twice before accusing others of cognitive decline.
All right, we're back. You read the report. you saw the testimony, you saw how it was used, and you saw the Democrats like Jimmy Raskin and their Jerry Nadler and the way that they cross-examined her. What did you make of Hur's use of that set of observations about Joe Biden? Was it necessary? Why was it in there? And what did you think happened with Hur in terms of covering himself with any glory during the congressional testimony?
Look, the only person that we have to blame is ourselves for Robert Hur. Unfortunately, Merrick Garland has once again shown that he just doesn't realize what game he's playing or the players who he's playing with. Joe Biden is such a good person and such a nice meaning person who wants to have everybody to try to work together and find compromise. But we don't live in that world anymore, and we don't live in that world now. But yet we still keep trying to play that game. And that's what Merrick Garland does over and over and over again. Why do I say that? Because they think somehow by putting in Robert Hur as the special counsel to investigate Joe Biden's handling of classified documents, just like when they had the special counsel, David Weiss, look at Hunter Biden. They're both Republicans. They're both Trump appointees. And they think, oh, well, these are smart lawyers. If we put Republicans in here and they do the investigation, somehow that will bring legitimacy to the Republicans. No. It's like trying to have a rational conversation with a psychopath. There's nothing you can do because the person is still the psychopath on the other end. And so why do we keep trying to play this game? It backfires every time, and it's a train wreck, right? Whether it was Hunter Biden and now Joe Biden with these two special counsels, and it was a ridiculous that this Hur special counsel was just a ridiculous. It was a ridiculous exercise in trying to make himself relevant. He did an investigation. He interviewed hundreds of witnesses. He spent, I can't tell you how many taxpayer dollars to look into whether or not whatever Joe Biden did by possessing some classified documents inadvertently by making a mistake was somehow equivalent to what former President Trump did when he took the documents. And then, as we have now learned from Mr. Butler, who spoke to Caitlin Collins on CNN that we're going to talk about next, testified that on the same day that the DOJ and the FBI were coming to get the classified documents, that very same day, he was getting the car, the Cadillac Escalade, to move the banker's boxes to load it onto Trump's plane that he can take it to New Jersey. I mean, it's like, I swear to God, it's like a bad movie of a bunch of guys, driving in these big SUVs. At one point, they were talking about how Trump and his clown car family and showed up in one car, and Mr. Butler had to put his luggage in his car. I mean, it's just ridiculous when you think about it, as they're like piling like Beverly Hillbillies onto an airplane with all his stolen goods. Anyway, it's just so frustrating to me that somehow that is equivalent to Joe Biden having some, inadvertent documents in his garage, who then said, okay, go ahead. Here they are. I didn't know I had them. I'm sorry I had them. I made a mistake. And, intent, for those people who didn't go to law school, intent is everything. Intent is the whole enchilada. Intent is what makes it the difference between a crime and an accident or a mistake. Okay. So and the example I like to give is in a car crash, right? You have a car, it hits someone and kills them, right? Horrific. Well, it's horrific no matter what. And no matter what, it involves a driver, a car, and a dead body on the other end. Well, if I add to those facts that the driver of that car was drunk and saw the person and said, you know what, I hate that person, I'm going to go ram the car straight into them and kill them. Guess what that is? That's intentional murder. If that same driver now was drunk and didn't see the person and was speeding and hit the person, that's manslaughter, because that's reckless, and they shouldn't have done that, and they shouldn't have been drunk driving and speeding, but they didn't mean to kill the person. So it's not intentional murder, it's manslaughter. So let's say that same person was driving slowly, not drunk and not speeding, and somebody jumped out in front of their car and was tragically killed. and it couldn't be avoided, that's a tragic accident, not a crime at all. Okay, so that's the difference right there. And it's all about, you still have a person, a car, and a dead body, right? I'm sorry to be so graphic, but to me, that's the best way to describe this. And that's the difference between a crime and not a crime. You've got the same result, you've got the same people and the same actors, but intent is everything in the criminal justice system, right? And so to compare the fact that two different ex-presidents had classified documents in their possession, and to not look at intent, and to try to somehow make the conduct equivalent is just disingenuous. Okay, so let's talk about that. And so for him to say Biden was not exonerated is just absurd, absolutely absurd. And that's what he tried to say. But that's all he had to say, was there was no criminal intent. That's what a prosecutor would do, should do. And that's what's appropriate for them to do. And you know what? Guess what? There's actual DOJ policies that govern this. You're not supposed to smear someone's, who you're not going to charge with a crime. It's like important, not just because of Joe Biden, but anybody, right? And as a prosecutor, you take that very seriously, that just the mere investigation, the mere accusation of something, even if you're ultimately acquitted, that could stain someone's reputation for the rest of their life. Oh, that guy, that he was charged with statutory rape. Well, it turns out it was completely false and it was a lie, but he was still charged with it. That can smear and stain someone's reputation for the rest of their life. So he actually had an obligation to come out and say he found no criminal intent, but instead he decided to be partisan, frankly. And I don't know if he's auditioning for a future federal judgeship in a Trump presidency or what. But I think when he testified before Congress, I would describe that equally as either a train wreck or a shit show. Excuse my language. But whatever he thought he was doing backfired, because he got it from both sides. Because you know why? He tried to kind of have it both ways. And guess what? It wasn't enough, because you can't, they aren't fair on the other side. They don't want the truth. They don't want facts. They just either you're part of their agenda or you're not. And so they went after him as well, because he didn't find there was a crime. Why? Because he couldn't. There is no crime. And so that's all he had to do. And he thought by throwing them a bone and repeating and parroting that same, MAGA language, that somehow Biden isn't fit for office. I mean, we all saw the State of the Union last week. I mean, he was incredible, right? He was absolutely incredible. Does he have a speech impediment because he's had a speech impediment his entire life? Yes, but he's incredible and he's brilliant and he's a good, honest person who doesn't try to pretend like he's something that he's not. And so whatever Special Counsel Hur was trying to do, I think is backfired, and he's just shown himself to be an illegitimate, just totally not coherent, fair special counsel, because it just, the facts did not bear anything out of what he was saying, and he put himself out there and stuck his, you have to mind your own business, as my mom used to say, as a kid. Like, I just am really appalled by what he did as a prosecutor, and he's just politicizing prosecution. So that's what I think about Robert Hur. But I do blame Merrick Garland, because that's number 3 thing that he did. Number 1 was the Hunter Biden special counsel. Number 2 was this, but the original sin of Merrick Garland, I know you're looking at me like, why are you so fiery today? And why are you so mad? I'm sorry, I have to calm down. But his original sin, Merrick Garland's original sin, was not investigating January 6th from the get-go. And that's why we are where we are, because he's trying to be he's a nice person. But we can't, this is a war. We're at war. This is not a battle. Sorry.
I like the piss and vinegar, Karen. We need to see more of that. Not less. Look, just to be fair, I don't disagree with the Hur report when it said that Joe Biden intentionally intended to retain certain documents so he could write a memoir. I'm sure that's true. That he intentionally intended to retain his personal diaries of notes he took when he was in the West Wing in the Oval Office with President of the United States, Barack Obama. I believe he did. The other stuff that was sort of in his boxes that were packed up and not properly packed up, look, he had people that worked for him. I mean, yes, it looks like there was a little bit of fumbling and mishandling. But as you pointed out, it has to rise to the level of criminal intent. And that's where prosecutorial discretion comes in. And when you're writing a report to either recommend the indictment of what was then an outgoing vice president of the United States, now a sitting president of the United States, or to exonerate him, it has to be one or the other, then you have to be careful with your words and efficient with your prose, and not set yourself up, unless you've invited it for some other reason, to be used as a pawn by, as you said, Karen, the bad guys on the other side who don't care about facts. They just care about, out of a 300-page report or whatever it was, twisting, not twisting, using a paragraph in there. He did not have to go so far as to say, and another reason I won't bring the case is I don't think I could get the conviction with a jury because they would take pity on a then late 80-year-old, because you'd have to wait till after this term to get the whole thing started, a late 80-year-old person with failing memory in his dotage. I'm like, really? You really had to go to that extreme to try to tie together your notes? I'm sorry that Robert Hur believed that he was the most important person in the room for the 3-hour over 2-day interview with the President of the United States during the start of a war. And to take the Mr. Peabody Wayback Machine to talk about all sorts of dates and deadlines in Joe Biden's life, including the death of his son and events around that. But he wasn't. Most important person in the room was the leader of the free world. And instant recall for somebody like that, regardless of age, can be difficult. I'm not sure Barack Obama would have passed the Hur test the way it's been described in the report. It looks like a lot of gotcha, a lot of aha, that doesn't go down to the basic concept of criminal intent, which is supposed to be the focus of the prosecutor's recommendation as to whether the prosecutor or not. I think the Democrats did a good job, if they're going to get a gift of this type of hearing, to use it to their advantage. We don't blow smoke or sunshine on Legal AF, that cheekily named podcast at the intersection of law and politics. It exists in the metaverse. It exists on the MeidasTouch YouTube channel, Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, only on the MeidasTouch YouTube channel. That's exclusively where we're at. And then on audio podcast platforms of your choice. If you know about Legal AF and you saw the show already, thank you for being part of our audience. We really appreciate you. This clip is really, if you missed the show, don't know about the show, would like to know about the show. That's why we're doing them. That's why we're doing After Darks. So take the clip, pass it on to somebody in your life, pay it forward, ask them to join our audience. If you know all about us and you're here already, we appreciate you. If you have no idea who I am or what that was, I'm Michael Popok. That was Legal AF. And we invite you to join us, where we curate the top 4 or 5 stories at the intersection of law, politics, and justice on the Legal AF podcast. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.